Hi, and welcome to the Work Related Podcast. I'm so excited to have Devi Peacock here as our guest today. Hello, Devi.
Hi, Liz. How you doing?
I'm so good. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, I want to tell everybody a little bit about your background. Devi is a certified professional coach and principal of Bold Type Strategies, an impact consultancy for people, nonprofits, and businesses who want to do good better. Devi founded and served as artistic and executive director of the activist arts group Peacock Rebellion, named by the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts list of 100 people, organizations, and movements shaping the future of culture, and co-led projects from an anti-violence organization to a campaign to save a community health clinic, to the youth division of a statewide LGBTQ civil rights group, to a historic campaign to turn a long-time Oakland Community Center into affordable housing and land forever. Debbie has worked as a fundraiser, event planner, community organizer, executive coach, slinger of jokes and ice cream, and even interned at Disney World, and gets their best life lessons from kids and cats.
True.
Welcome, Debbie. Are you a cat person?
I am. I love dogs, but I am a cat person. Absolutely.
Have you always been a cat person?
I have. I'm drawn to them. I'm
Cats
drawn to
are
cats and to birds, and fortunately, they coexist in my
what a
world.
combo. Cats are so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very happy that you're here with us. There's so many things we could talk to you about. That slinger of ice cream.
True.
I'm going to get into the ice cream in a minute with you because I think people want to know what's the story and your path. You're an activist and an advocate and a passionate defender of people. How does one get there? Can you tell us a
Mm.
little bit about your story?
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, where it seemed like the main after-school activity was the KKK.
Wow.
So, so I started cracking jokes to survive, and I still do. So, I started learning about these types of organizations, and I just wanted to understand like why, what is their logic? What do they try, and people are hurting, right? And we see this with this administration, right? Like people are really, oh, things are getting really bad, right? And so what I want to do along my path, I thought for a while I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an environmental engineer because I saw Aaron Brockovich,
Sure, of
um,
course.
right? Like all of these things, I thought I might want to be a U.S. senator one day, and all of the
Still
things,
might.
right? I just want to do my part to help make the world a better place, right? And so, what are the different ways that I could do that? I fell into some of these roles accidentally. Um, I did intern at Disney World, and that was because I was learning business, right? I had this big dream, Liz, that I would start this chain of like vegetarian fast food restaurants and called it the Veggie Table. Someone had already come up with it. I didn't, there was no internet back then. I didn't know.
Sure.
And
How
so
would you know? How would you know?
right? And so, but all of these things, everything that I've done, I really just want to improve the material conditions on a large scale for communities and with communities. And so that's kind of how I came about. And so much of it also was about I've survived actually a lot of different forms of violence. And I believe the people who are surviving these things should be at the center of their stories, right? Should actually, we are able to take agency, right? And know how to improve our lives and conditions for ourselves and our communities and our families. And so that is really what drives my work. Yeah.
Is there could you paint us like a picture of a little boy in Pennsylvania and then you're in Disney World and how does that look?
Yeah. I I was in student government in high school um, because I thought our math curriculum was terrible. I'm not good at math, okay? So, but I thought I was constantly like fighting the administration to try to get resources for our communities. But I also wanted to be in business. I thought, oh, it's a lot more fun to be in business for myself,
Yeah, right, right,
and
right.
right. And then in college, my best friend was targeted by a white supremacist organization, right? And almost died. And
Mm,
so I was working on a campaign to support her and to try to address the issues that were going on, right? It was literally about our day-to-day safety. Through
mm,
there, I actually fell in, a lot of our groups kind of came together, student organizations, to support each other for survival. And then that's how I ended up in Washington, D.C., working for the national organization of an organization that I got involved with at, as a student in Pennsylvania. And so I ended up working for Gloria Steinem at this huge, huge march on Washington.
wow.
And so I got to, I had at that time, that was my first big fancy job, and I was traveling I was based in DC, but I was going across the country. I had a staff of about 10 field organizers. And I remembered I was so exhausted. I gave a speech, in Chicago that was meant for Madison, Wisconsin. I did not know where I was.
Sure, sure, sure,
Right?
sure.
And I went home and I started writing like a musical comedy about nonprofits and how,
As one does.
as one does. And I learned, we can just be a lot more effective in the ways that we better at the ways we treat each other, right?
Hmm.
And if we treat ultimately, when we treat workers well, it absolutely, it always is a benefit for the bottom line, whether
Yeah.
it's mission, whatever the mission of your organization
Hmm.
or company
Hmm.
is, you
Hmm.
have to treat your people well.
Hmm.
And then they will thrive. Give them the support and the tools they need, and they're going to do better. Yeah.
Right, right. Now, this is, a beautiful sentiment, obviously. I couldn't agree with you more, but it's not the norm, unfortunately. What's that tension in your view?
Mm. Well, I think, some of these companies, they clearly they have a profit interest that I think is also sometimes driven by fear.
Mm,
So when you
mm,
think about these large corporations, and a CEO is making whatever, 100 times more
right.
than the lowest paid worker, right?
300
1,000
times.
times,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's never enough, is it, Liz?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so suddenly, this big tech company, they turn something just in the news today was a big tech company. They finally turned a profit after many, many years. And then they did all of these layoffs, hundreds of them, hundreds of workers who now have to find another job. And this is, I think, really reckless and irresponsible. And so when we look at that tension, I also really like to, I do a couple things, right? I support workers who are looking for whether it's their dream job or something that's really going to be aligned with their values, their purpose. But then also, so to give them like discernment, so they deserve everybody,
Sure,
you deserve your best job ever.
sure,
Why not?
sure,
Um, but then I also work with companies. There are some out there, some companies that
sure,
want to do right by their
sure,
workers,
sure,
right?
absolutely.
And nonprofits and all these and small businesses and B corporations.
Mm,
There are plenty of groups out there who are trying.
sure.
So I help them do the right thing better, really
I love
improve
it.
their recruitment, really find workers also who are going to be in alignment with building power and profit with
Hmm.
each other
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that we can actually improve communities. And so that's part of what I do. Have really solid HR practices, give people an excellent onboarding experience, make sure that their first 90 days is exquisite, and we talk about things like bonuses. What are the benefit packages that people are really wanting right now? Like
Sure.
all of that stuff. And then how do we make that happen? How do we
Okay, I
treat?
love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Let's dig into that a little bit, okay?
Mhm.
When you're working with employers, what are some of the top recommendations or some of the issues that you see that they really need to address first?
Mm. Well, so one of them is actually emotional intelligence, right? It is so important. I think it's even more important, these like soft skills
Mm-hmm.
than the harder skills. The harder
Hmm.
skills that can be taught.
Right,
Emotional
right.
intelligence, well, I actually think emotional intelligence, that is also a set of skills that's practice. We need to practice resolving conflict with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's one in healthy, constructive ways. We need to practice decision making and decision support tools. Sometimes, Liz, we've all been in this situation, right? Where um, you a boss says, "Oh, we're going to make a decision by, I really value your input," and then they completely ignore the feedback. They're probably
100%.
thinking about playing golf or something,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
so they're not
yes.
even listening. And so we really want to show. how we were incorporating people's feedback, be really transparent. And so there are four things. I look for in a leader, I look for transparency, accountability, vulnerability, and integrity.
Okay.
Every good leader does those and practices and shows people how they do those, embody those four things, right?
Sure.
You have to show up as a whole person and make sure understand that your staff are whole people too.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to create an environment that gives work-life balance. That's not just a catchphrase. That means do not send emails after 5 p.m. If you
Right.
have an idea as a boss and you want to send it out, schedule it.
Schedule it.
Schedule it. Easy, right? Yeah, that's one example.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Now, Debbie, I love what you say about fear because I'm obsessed with fear in the workplace. I think it's the number one topic we need to be talking about that we're not talking about, right? It's very
Mhm.
hard to talk about.
Yeah,
We were trained since we were little kids. You're not supposed to say when you're afraid. You're supposed to hide it, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, how do we break that down? You talk about vulnerability. And I think a lot of managers, especially high up managers, vulnerable me? What? No way.
Yeah, all managers are robots, right? And so
Hmm.
somehow they're going to be lifeless forms, right?
Hmm.
Look at what's happening in the world right now, right? And we can see these like megalomaniacal, these huge ego people. You don't even seem like a person. No one wants to
Hmm.
work for a person who doesn't seem like a real person,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
So you don't want to dump things, dump your emotions on your workers, but you do want to normalize something that's happening, right? Like
Hmm.
be like, yeah, you know what? Let's take a moment, and at your stand-ups or your, an all hands meeting and stuff, be like, look, you know, there's a lot that's going on. A lot of our people are stressed out right now, and I just want to take a moment and say, like, look, I see you. This is happening, and you are not alone in this. Okay,
Hmm.
that's one.
Hmm.
Two, um, I think it's important to actually even talk about things like how was your weekend, and refer
Right.
back to it. You know,
Hmm.
that I think is remembering the things that are outside of people's like work lives. I
Hmm.
think is really see people as whole people. Ask how they're doing, and then respond. Like actually
Hmm.
show
Hmm.
active listening, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you're building a culture that moves away from fear, and then also admitting mistakes. Right. So I think this is like really important one. Hey, look, when you're doing a feedback meeting or something, giving a criticism, um, I will frame them instead of hey, instead of we're gonna have a difficult conversation, say let's have a courageous conversation. Let's
Hmm.
actually lean into our courage and say some things that are hard. And I want you to know that it is okay as as a worker, as a member of my team to say when something is not working, right?
Hmm.
We're a learning organization. So like organizations that commit to learning understand that people make mistakes. That's actually part of the process, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely. There's certain ones that like they're, fireable offenses, sure, right? Things that you'll get written up
Sure,
for. But there are
sure.
other things where like, look, the vast majority of these things, okay, yeah, we didn't hit a goal. Come from a place of curiosity and ask, hey, what happened there? This was the expectation in the work plan. Something didn't go according to plan. I'm curious, like, hey, what happened here? How can we partner together to
Hmm.
figure out how this doesn't happen again? It can't happen again, but let's figure out what is it actually we need to shift some responsibilities.
Hmm.
Do we need to
Hmm.
adjust the timeline, right? Let's
Hmm.
think creatively.
Hmm.
Another part I think is very important is, some people call it like nonviolent communication, other people call it empowered communication. So this is a model, right? We start with like, hey, here's an observation I had, right? And here's the feeling that came up for me because I have a need for this thing. Now I'm going to make a request. An example is like, oh yeah, when I saw that the meeting notes there were like major typos and there were some errors in the meeting notes. I felt a little frustrated. I have a really deep need for trust. I want to be able to trust that the numbers are correct because we have to make some major decisions. Are you willing to check the numbers before we go into an all hands meeting, right? To just make
Hmm.
sure, just double check. So that's an example. It also, people can take ownership over our own feelings and our own needs and be responsible in that way. It's accountability for everyone. So that's another thing I think bosses really should be better at.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Um, so around these topics and models, are there books or trainings that you recommend?
Do. I didn't know you were going to ask that, but I just am so excited because these are on my bookshelf right now. Some of the best books I've ever read, and this is not going to show up
No,
because
it
it's
shows up
written
great.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Management in a Changing World. There's an organization called the Management Center. Some of the best training I have ever seen on also looking from from a place of if you have a very diverse staff, if you have if you want to actually see like what is changing about management now, today in our field, this is one of the best books. Okay, if you are a boss, there's also a person, an author and consultant. Her name is Rita Seaver. She has two books. One is called um, Leading for Justice, Supervision, HR, and Culture. Excellent, excellent book. Okay, and it's long. So there's a lot of stuff in here.
Okay.
So if you need some bite-sized, quick hits, okay, there's another one called Supervision Matters, 100 bite-sized ideas to transform, uh, let's see, to transform you and your team.
Nice.
Excellent stuff about, how to reflect as a boss and
Mhm.
improve how to, templates for like, oh, I'm going to have a difficult conversation, supervision conversation coming up. How do I prep for this? Because you have to actually give your feedback quickly in a time, like in a timely manner. Otherwise, this
Mhm.
stuff is going to fester. It's going to come
Sure,
out some other way.
sure, sure. Cause resentment. That's awesome. So right now we have this really tumultuous atmosphere here in the United States, politically and socially,
Mhm.
since the presidential administration came in. What changes are you seeing around that in the nature of work specifically?
Okay. So one thing I'm really noticing is a deterioration in empathy. Look, people are dysregulated, right? Everyone is activated in some way, wherever you are on the political spectrum. I'm to the left on the spectrum, right? But everyone is kind of is riled up right now. And so one of the things we have to relearn is how can I be in a room with someone I disagree with? What we
Hmm.
also have to be able to do is practice. And I think one of the ways to cultivate that for myself is I have a really deep meditation practice, right? If it doesn't have to be denominational, right? Like you literally just breathe and focus on your
Sure,
breathing, close your eyes, all
sure,
that, right?
sure.
And I do like a yoga practice. I'm South Asian, so it's really helpful because I think about it. What it does is it actually gives me flexibility in my body to be able to sit for longer periods through discomfort. And you
Hmm.
see, what I'm trying to do, the difference between, if you think about, some meditation teachers talk about the difference between, I want to expand the time between the moment someone throws a punch and the moment I respond. There's an incredible expanse there that, it seems like a small moment. I want to expand that moment. And if you think about it as in the workplace, hopefully that will not happen, physical punch, right?
Not
But as
physically, right.
right, but an emotional punch, right?
Hmm.
If someone
Hmm.
says something, right, I want to get away from my lizard brain. So what
Right,
I do, one of the things like
right.
I'll actually take a sip of water,
That's really good. I'm going to follow your
right?
lead there, Debbie.
And it'll give me gives that amygdala a little break, right? A
Hmm.
few seconds, and I'll do a little bit of breathing and see, okay, what do I actually, and also where do I feel this in my body?
Hmm.
Because the workplace, in this country, we're so disconnected from our bodies,
Hmm.
but so much of what's happening in the workplace and so much of the conflict is actually about really like there's some body responses happen. It's about our
Hmm.
feelings.
Right,
Right? It's not
right,
about the stuff
right,
that people are saying. It's about
right,
what we're feeling and then
right.
suppressing that, and then not being really honest about how we navigate these challenges together. So I'm seeing also for job seekers, I am seeing people okay. So one of the things I do is I consult um, with organizations on hiring processes, right? And I am seeing jobs that have used to have maybe 100 applicants get like 600 applicants.
Hmm.
I'm seeing that a lot I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And
Sure.
so as a very progressive, progressive region and a progressive state, I'm seeing a lot of applications come in from people in kind of more like right-wing states because they need to move to California to get,
Right.
for safety.
Right. Right.
So I get that. What I'm also seeing is way more use of applicant tracking systems
Right. Right.
and applicants also using a lot more like AI for their resumes and cover letters.
Ugh,
And AI is glitchy, Liz. You know it, I
it's
know it.
so
Very
glitchy.
glitchy.
Just
So
sucks the humanity right out of
yeah,
your letter.
yeah.
It's a shame.
It's not even good practice, right? So when you think about like effective practice, these language learning models going into an I can tell when I'm looking at when I have a stack of 600 resumes, I can tell which
100%.
ones are AI. You can, right?
100%.
You know it. Um, so that's another thing. It's not necessarily a strategic advantage. Um, and then I'm also seeing jobs that used to be like 2 rounds of interview be like 6. And employers not knowing how many rounds of interview are going to
Uh,
have. I especially see this with my corporate, in the corporate field. Yeah.
well, it's true.
So
Yes.
how are you dealing with, how are the people you work with, how do they navigate that?
Everything that every single word you're saying, Debbie, is so real. It's, I think people, it's a mindset shift. You said it. Lengthen that time between the stimulus and the reaction, and remember that not all these folks deserve you, quite literally.
Yes.
And remember that you control your reaction to any situation. There is an aspect, I think, of playing the long game. If this
Mhm.
job is in my best interest, even if I don't intend to be there for 10 years, I will put up with some nonsense, and there may
Yep.
be some nonsense in the recruiting process because I see the win for myself.
Mhm.
But then there's also checking in with your body and say, no, I can't. That's the third time they canceled that interview, and I have to follow up on them to reschedule. And that just tells me something so fundamental about them that I can't see it. I have to take care of my body 6 months from now in that job too.
Yep.
And if it's going to be a place where they're signaling me before I walk in, they're not going to respect me, then I probably should just take it as a sign from the cat in the sky and go elsewhere.
Yeah, trust your gut, right? Like
Yeah.
it's your intuition is so powerful in these processes, but then also it has been so clear now, if it wasn't before, these corporations do not have allegiance to the workers, right? So what are you willing to do for like a year? I think
Right.
I think you think about it, a year or 2 years. So people
Right.
are leaving their jobs much more often. I mean, the vast majority of the workplace is considering is
Oh,
looking
like
for another job,
70%. Yeah, I'm
right?
open. I'm
Yeah,
open.
yeah.
If LinkedIn had a badge that just said, "Well, I'm open to the right opportunity," every single person would have that badge.
Yeah, and it should not be this hard to hustle in this country, right? Like our country is very far behind many others because our this social fabric is deteriorated, right? Like everything is privatized. It's absurd and it is not normal for this planet in particular,
It's not
right?
normal.
This is strange, right?
Mhm.
So I think what I would say for one, get your money as a worker, if
Mhm.
you're as an applicant, get the money that you need to get, but also get those out into, donate what you can to like baseline frontline organizations, one that are giving like things like, food and shelter and things to people that the government should provide and isn't and hasn't, and then also is going to be even harder for people. So basic needs, but then also to organizing groups that are working to change the conditions, right? Like if your union, sorry, if your job that you're in does not have a union, is this an opportunity to unionize, or to do that kind of thing, right? Like
Right.
there's even if you're a freelancer, there's a freelancers union, right? Like we have choices here. And the truth is, organized together, working together, we are so much more powerful as workers, and we change. That's how we got an 8-hour workday. Now, more and more, the 8-hour workday has shifted to back to like a 12-hour workday
And
for,
12. Right. Right. Right.
you look at the tech sector or many other sectors, and the people who are actually feeling it the hardest, of course, are poor and working class communities,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's who's facing a lot of this, right? We saw that with COVID, who's considered an essential worker, right? It, it's uh, it's deeply unsettling, but also as a worker, as an applicant. So apply to a job, consider it that you don't necessarily have to have allegiance long term, and it also is not your full identity. cultivate time for your hobbies, for all the other things in your life, because your job is not going to be your entire life purpose. It just isn't, you know. They're not out there to a lot of these folks, they're looking at their bottom line first and will fire someone, lay someone off if they need to on a on a
Right.
dime very
On a
quickly.
whim.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So Debbie, to wrap up here, we could talk all day. It's awesome talking with you. Questions.
Yeah.
Your favorite questions to ask an employer when you're interviewing with them.
Okay. So I always ask, what do you love about your job and the company? What do you love? Not what you'll tolerate. So that's one. Two, I look for culture fit, right? So I ask, what is the organizational culture? What is the organizational culture in your assessment? I ask, can you do a quick SWOT analysis of the department I'd be in? So what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, threats of the department? And I'll also ask about the role because I want to see if a supervisor, if a hiring manager understands what's really going on and if they're radically honest about the weaknesses and the threats. If
Yes.
they can't
Yes.
admit that to an applicant, that's not a place I want to be.
There you go.
I want to know their supervision style. I want to know their supervision style, so I ask for that, but I also want to understand if they are self-reflexive. Are they doing the work to understand what their supervision style and their leadership style are? Because if they are not, I cannot teach that to them,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
I ask, what key goals do you want the person in this position to reach in the first 6 months? And it's such a powerful, their answer almost always that will tell me whether I can work there because I will know if someone will say like, oh, I don't know because we developed that together and stuff. But if they don't, it's good to develop them together, but the supervisor should still know certain amounts of things.
Hmm.
They should say something, right? If there are not key performance indicators, that's a flag that there are not systems and structures in place to support you,
Right.
not just to hold you accountable, to
Yeah.
support you, right? So, but if it's rigid and they're like these certain things have to be met, that means they're not necessarily flexible, dynamic, adaptive, right? And so you kind of have to watch for that and trust in the pattern of these interviews. What are you seeing as the full pattern, right? Is this a place where I can work? Are these people I want to work with? More than anything else, I also
Sure.
am looking at, are
Sure.
these people I want to work with? How
Absolutely.
does this feel? You know?
I love it. Now, Debbie, how do people get in touch with you and who should get in touch with you?
Sure. If you are out there and you're trying to do good in this world, right, get in touch with me. If you're kind of more like apolitical, you're not really, that's we're probably there are plenty of coaches out there, consultants and things. I exclusively make high impact, social impact people and organizations and businesses and companies. I want to make your work better. I want to work with you to do your best work ever. So hit me up, go to boldtypestrategies.com. And there's a dusty form I put on there. So feel free to just to get in touch that way. And then just last plug, I just want to shout out Liz Ryan
Oh,
because Liz has personally, viewers at home, listeners at home, Liz has helped me personally in my career. And so high recommend for Liz's courses. They are excellent, excellent, and an incredible value. So that was not a paid endorsement. I will say this is just me telling you, get on that.
oh, thank you, Debbie. And I just want to say again, that's bold, BOLD, type,
Mhm.
TYPE, strategies, plural, STRATEGIES.com. And you can reach Debbie that way.
Thank you so
Debbie
much.
Peacock, thank you so, so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. This was so much fun.
Oh, I'm so glad. You're amazing.
Thank you. Okay,
Thanks.
okay, bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Whoop, I don't want to end the meeting. We'll just cut off this little bit. I'll turn off the recording.